possible because the entire circulation is, indeed, stopped by death. For example, if a person is killed by poison within a very short time, then the poison can surely no longer penetrate into the hair and deposit itself there, right? It could probably only be detected, then, in the stomach, in the blood or, in some circumstances, in the intestines, but not in the hair, right? Quetzal says that is correct, for when the circulation of the body no longer functions and, thus, comes to a stop, poisons or other substances can no longer be transported into the hair and can no longer be deposited in this and, therefore, can also no longer be detected in this by any analysis. Billy says another question: when I was in India, it was probably 1963, I think, there was a solar eclipse. At that time, I was precisely at the Red Fort. During the solar eclipse, I then noted that strange atmospheric pressure changes occurred and that just a strange fine wind arose and everything together evoked a strange mood. Is that actually normal and always the case with a solar eclipse, or was I, perhaps, mistaken from a peculiar psychological excitement? Quetzal says you did not succumb to any deception because such atmospheric pressure changes occur, in addition to others, during every solar eclipse. This involves both the earthly climatic conditions as well as the influences of the sun and moon. Billy says all clear, then I observed correctly. Then again something else: there are still viruses and bacteria, overall countless different microorganisms which endure intense cold or intense heat. So, for example, 273 degrees below zero and millions of degrees of heat. The heat bacteria, to my knowledge, are called thermal bacteria and live in volcanoes, etc., as well as in suns and space nebulae. Now, in addition, I wonder whether there are, together with the microorganisms that are immune to heat and immune to cold, also those that are immune to radiation, and I'm thinking especially of radiations that are deadly for human beings, such as gamma rays and X-rays, radium rays, or simply all radioactive radiation, etc. Quetzal says that is correct, for there actually are such microorganisms in thousands of forms. Billy says aha, and how does it stand with their immunity against the various radiations, by which I mean how high are the doses of radiation that they withstand? Quetzal says that differs depending on the microorganism. So there are microorganisms that can withstand only a little more radiation than human beings, while others have increased doses of radiation that are several thousand times higher than those that are deadly for human beings. Billy says once again, I was asked because I had talked, in accordance with your information, about neutrinos if these have a mass, and of course, I said that this is, indeed, the case. But now, I no longer remember exactly whether Pata explained to me that there are different types of neutrinos or whether I imagined something in this respect. Quetzal says you remember correctly, for there are actually several types of neutrinos, whereby these can transform into one another. Their mass is, indeed, minutely small, nevertheless, they actually have a mass. Billy says, so to speak, a nanomass or even a subatomic mass, if I may so designate it. Would that be about right? Quetzal says you always find good designations. Billy says beyond Pluto's orbit, in the cosmic debris belt from which comets and meteors sometimes come into the interior of our solar system, like also from the even further belt existing beyond this one, there are rather large structures that could be designated as moons or small planets. Very many objects of both belts, so of the one beyond Pluto and of the one that is even further beyond, are rather large and are up to around 3,000 kilometers in size, and they have an orbital period around Sol that amounts to, at least in the inner ring, around 11,300 years, as Pata said. Now, the question is whether there is the danger that these colossi can also penetrate into the inner system and endanger the Sol planets. Quetzal says this possibility is so infinitesimally small that it practically doesn't have to be mentioned. The structures that penetrate from these regions into the inner solar system are regular comets and meteors, which have certain courses that have been given for thousands and tens of thousands of years. It only rarely happens, however, that in both belts, collisions of different objects take place, which then drift out of their traditional courses and, under certain circumstances, embark on courses into the inner solar system and possibly endanger planets or plunge into the sun. Even more rarely, the possibility exists that cosmic wanderers which come from other galaxies and which drift through space, such as the Destroyer, break into the area of the inner solar system. Billy says that's very reassuring for Earth humanity to know. But now, my friend, I've asked all questions for today. So we can now turn to the purely private matters. The end.